Welcome, guys. Welcome, everybody, to the PBBG podcast. This is episode 2. We're going to be talking today about a topic that I'm really excited about because I think everybody has really strong opinions about this, which is monetization. Caleb, did you want to go ahead and kick us off on this one?
Yeah. So, I mean, we're just going to kind of dig into this from, a perspective of like a developer, 'cause that's like some of our, experience, but also from the perspective of a player and like, what kind of games have done monetization well, what are some that maybe haven't, how would you design an ideal monetization system? What are some things that work? What are some things that don't? Pay to win? We're going to try and dig into all of it today. So I just kind of wanted to kick it off. We were talking a little bit before the call started about just like monetization and some games that either have it or don't. And I think, Fu, you were saying that, Imperial Conflict doesn't have any monetization at all. And you were talking a bit about your reasoning for that, if you want to dig into that a bit.
Yeah, so I've always had a bit of a hesitation because I've had bad experiences as a player before I ever got into the dev world. So when I took it over about 6 years ago, and there was already some kind of pay-to-win mechanisms in place that were kind of like not obvious, but to me, in the purest sense of it, it compromised the competition at least a little bit. So for me, coming into it from that perspective, I decided like I don't want any. I just want it to be a pure, like, money can't affect the competition at all. Maybe we'll sell some skins for ships or something. That was my take on it, which 6 years later have to acknowledge the reality. Like, yeah, it's a very broke project. I don't make I've been operating at a loss ever since I took it over, and that's one of the reasons why. So I've had to kind of soften my stance on that a little bit. Not that I'm going to start doing loot boxes all over the place or anything like that, but I do have to confront the reality that it's going to be a difference between keeping the game online or having to say, like, you know what, this was fun, but I can't support this financially anymore. So that's I'm going to have to confront that eventually and figure out where the right balance is for me there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the reality for a lot of devs too. I know, like, I know several people who just want to make games as a passion project. And when you're putting in your own time and effort as a hobby, like, yeah, it can absolutely be a passion project. But once you get a couple hundred people playing your game, like, server costs start to go up. You have to spend more time supporting it. People are expecting more from you. And so all of a sudden those scales tip and it's like, hey, I actually kind of need to make a little bit of money from this to make it worth my while. So, yeah.
How have you approached implementing a system that sustains the project while also not like feeling predatory? I guess that's the kind of general conflict I have myself is I don't want it to feel like it's not fun or like the experience is tainted, I guess.
Yeah. I think for me personally, it's like one of the things that helps the most with preventing pay to win, right? Because like I think everything on this whole conversation about monetization is a scale. Like you go from completely free to play, where the game may or may not exist in 6 months because the dev could disappear or it doesn't make money, right? But completely free. And on the other side, you have like incredibly predatory monetization models, right? And so I think where we all try and meet is like somewhere in the middle where we're making money from the game. And it's something that is honest. We can go to bed at night and feel good about it, but that's still not a clear black and white, like we're over here, So for me personally, one of the things that I like, one of the hard lines that I draw is capping spending. And so that cap isn't necessarily like you can only spend $10, $15, $20 a month. The cap is that you can get, let's say you had unlimited premium currency in the game. There's only so many things you can do with it. You can't just keep spending it forever and ever and ever and getting more and more stuff. And so one of the things that I've done with Elithor is create like the main monetization model is VIP, which is essentially a subscription that you can purchase in the game. And it gives you a whole set of, boosts that are like 10 to 15% boosts in various areas of the game. It's definitely like useful, right? It's not like hey, you only get like a skin or something. Like it helps you get ahead, but it's also just a sub, right? You can't level up your sub. You can only get it and have it for a couple of weeks or a month or extend it. And then that's it. You can't keep sinking premium currency. So personally, that's one of the things that I've done to like curb that pay to win side of things is like putting a cap on the spending.
Makes sense. About you, Ian, you got any particular, experiences from yourself where you confronted that kind of dynamic, I guess?
Yeah, actually, a couple of games that I've had quite a pay to win aspect, actually. Crime Block, for one, is actually probably the most pay to win game I've worked on. Now, originally when I took it over, I actually didn't want this whole pay to win aspect. I wanted to try and remove it. However, the game was entirely built around it. For example, one of the features is, and the game has permadeath, so once you're shot, you basically have to start over again. And one of the things you could buy is bullets. Now, it's not pay to win in the aspect of, oh, you can level up or you get XP, but you could basically put in $100 and wipe a crew.
Huh.
And yeah, that's quite problematic. And I had quite a challenge actually trying to solve this, because I originally released credits without bullet buying. And I got a lot of complaints, like too many complaints, in which I actually had to put bullets back in. Now, previously, you could buy an unlimited amount of bullets, basically however big your wallet is. I did actually implement a cap, so you could only buy 50,000 or 100,000 bullets per day, and that reset at midnight. It's still not a great solution, but it did appease a lot of the players. Mm-hmm. Now, the players did get around this by basically using other people's accounts to buy the bullets. But yeah, pay to win, I've had experiences from both ends. And at the end of the day, there are players that want pay to win and there are players that don't. And I think it's a very vocal minority. And I'm probably going to shoot myself in the foot here. But it seems like a very vocal minority actually care about the pay to win aspect. A lot of people just want to play the game.
Yeah, I think that's something that I realized just in general, in gaming in general, having read and heard about all the uproar over stuff like, Battlefront 2 or, other games where it's just like, it's a controversy, but people still buy the games. And that's not to invalidate the argument. There's very clear, reasons to be upset there. But I think you're right that there's a lot of, maybe a bigger majority of people who might be a little annoyed, but ultimately maybe don't care that much. They just want to have the experience, and that maybe where it's kind of like the outcry is maybe a little overrepresented for good or for worse. Maybe it needs to be, but maybe it's not quite the reality necessarily.
That's definitely what I found. I personally don't like the pay to win aspects, and I'm working on a couple of games at the moment. And one of the problems I'm coming across is trying to remove the pay to win aspect. I'm not sure how it's going to happen. Because as a player, I don't enjoy that. I don't enjoy knowing that my account could be shot, for example, and then I'd have to start over just because somebody has more money than me. Mm-hmm. It's just inherently unfair.
Yeah, that's kind of my own hesitance to it as well. But I do think I've softened up a little bit, because at least with Imperial Conflict, one of the things that we've realized as we go on is that there's a lot of like hyper active players that are really like putting in hours a day that kind of dominate the game. So in a way, letting maybe money be something that could tip that balance is actually might increase the fairness, because not everyone has time to dump all that time into it. Yeah. And of course, the people who are hyperactive aren't going to feel that way. They're going to feel like their effort is lost. But it's just a balancing act. I think to Caleb's point, the idea that it's a spectrum feels right to me. Like maybe it's not so black and white. It's more like, where do you land on that spectrum?
I mean, if you take a quick step out and you look at companies like Supercell, Clash of Clans, Boom Beach, they are incredibly heavy pay to win, but millions of people play the game. Like they're $1 billion company. If pay to win was such an issue, the company wouldn't exist.
It's true. I remember some mobile game I was playing. I don't remember the title. It was a zombie themed survival game, and I played it like daily at least for a good couple of weeks before it finally hit me like, oh, I can't really compete because the paid players have all this sweet gear, and I'm going to get my butt kicked all the time. But then I thought, it's still fun. I'll still play it once in a while. So even myself, it's like, as much as I think, conceptually that I don't like it, when it comes down to it, I don't know if I really, care that much if the game is fun enough,
Yeah. And if that's the price that you're paying to be able to play the game for free, like, is it worth it? And for a lot of people, I would say it is. Like, you were saying, Ian, that a lot of people, there was an outcry when you removed pay to win because they really like that. And for most people, they probably don't care too much. I mean, it's unfortunate when your account gets shot, right? Because someone else has a bigger wallet than you. But at the end of the day, you're getting to play this game absolutely for free because other people are paying, right? Like, there's just the reality that I think a lot of people are aware of and maybe don't want to vocalize because the vocal minority is so outspoken that pay to win is the worst thing to exist in the world. But yeah, I felt the same way. Like I felt like there's games that I play, like there's Kingdom Builders, on mobile that are just absolute pay to win trash. Like, to be completely honest, and I love it. Like I really do. All the timers and, getting zeroed and zeroing other people and picking on people smaller than you. Like I have zero chance of ever competing against some of these people that just spend, $50 to $100 a day to just stay at the very top, and I don't really care. Like I get to play a really fun game and I get to check in regularly and be a part of a group. And like, I will never be number one, but the price of never being number one is still worth it for me to play the game. And I think a lot of players probably feel that same way too.
Yeah, I think it comes down to managing expectations. Like if you come into an experience thinking like what the deal is, what you're going to get out of it, you adjust your experience accordingly. You're not going to be surprised, I guess. So maybe it's a little more tolerable. I was just reading about was it Diablo Immortal, the mobile one?
Yeah,
and how there was like a split view on that, and the old players, the non-mobile players who grew up with it, of course they're going to be upset because they had different expectations. But the players who come from the mobile world who are already used to it, maybe you're like, well, what's the big deal? It's kind of how games are nowadays. So maybe it really depends on who your market is or who you're catering to, but also just in general, the general expectation as gamers to whether or not how that's going to be a problem, it's going to exist. It's not like it was 20 years ago. You buy a Nintendo game and then you unwrap it and that's it. Like the environment has evolved a lot. I think despite the outcry, and, it's not to forgive predatory practices or anything. I just think it's not quite so simple to think, pay to win is bad necessarily. I think maybe it's a matter of implementation or how it's, how the expectations are set for the player.
Yeah. So a lot of what we're talking about is, the microtransaction monetization model, like having a free-to-play game that you purchase premium currency or boosts or bullets or gems or whatever it looks like. But there's also some other ways to monetize games too that I think are maybe underdeveloped or less explored than they should be. And so I know one that a lot of players that hate pay to win always go to is the buy to play, right? The idea of you buy a Nintendo game, you unwrap it, that's it. You get the entire game in one package. And that's one example. Another example is like an ad-driven game. So like, I think we talked last episode about how like our first browser games that we got into, and one of mine was RuneScape. And the game was free to play for most people. You could buy a sub, but on the free to play version, they had ads on the top and the bottom of the screen that would refresh every 5 minutes or whatever. And I'd spend hours there. So who knows how many times I was looking at ads, And then also just like a sub model too, World of Warcraft or EVE Online or, RuneScape. And a lot of these bigger games have a sub model where you just pay a flat fee monthly. And then once you pay it, you get the entire game unlocked, and that's that. So have you guys seen any of these other models in the PBBG space, like being done well or maybe being done, less optimized?
Yeah. So it's been a while since I've checked, so I'm not sure how accurate this information is anymore. But Phosphorus Universe, when I signed up, I saw that there was some kind of pass system, some kind of access unlock, which I thought was pretty cool. I don't often see that so much in our space, but it was interesting to see, I guess a sense of confidence. It seemed like they knew what they were doing. They had their idea or their head around a model that they wanted to pursue. I don't know how much it's worked for them or if it's been a success or not, but it made sense to me when I was looking at it. It's like, all right, you get you don't get it all up front. You got to have to put something up for it. It made sense, I think.
Yeah, that's cool.
Idlescape does something a little bit different. And they basically have donations. They're entirely donation run at the moment. I know in the future they intend to change that. But what happens when you donate at the moment is if you donate $5, then the entire server gets 20% XP bonus for 5 minutes. So it no longer means that whoever has the biggest wallet gets the bonuses. Everybody does. They share in the wealth, so to speak.
Oh, yeah. I love that kind of system because it's like I feel like it's exciting. Like as a player, it's like, there's an upgrade on the table if we put in for it, and then everyone's going to get the boost. That's a really nice model.
That's true. Unfortunately, with donations and how they're completely voluntary, it's not sustainable. I know roughly how much they bring in. I won't share that, but it's not a sustainable model. And they have 73,000 registered users. They have between 1900 and 2100 users on ranking at any one time. But even then, like getting people to donate is still a challenge.
Well, yeah, I mean that's definitely the an unfortunate reality is that it's nice to ask people, but some people will be great and you might get even like big donators, and that's always awesome, but it's not quite like you're saying sustainable. It's kind of like it needs to be maybe a little more baked into the system and maybe more not such like I want to say asking for a handout, but maybe asking for like, hey, please, if you like it, it'd really help us out, it'd be a favor. I think that kind of pitch, maybe it's nice when it works, but it doesn't seem like it works to scale,
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a different space, but like the Twitch streaming world too. Like maybe a year or so ago, there was like a huge uprise. I don't want to say uprise. There was a bunch of big streamers that basically were like saying, hey, stop donating onto the channel. Like people who were donating to get like screen time or get their message played on the screen. It was like, just stop doing that. Like you're throwing your money away. Like, people were doing it in order to like get their own like message up on the screen and kind of have their 5 seconds of fame or whatever. But streamers were saying like, basically the amount of money that I make from your donations is like less than 1% of my total income because of like sponsorships and Twitch partnerships and, all the other things that end up making them money. And I think the same probably would be with games too, right? Like if you say, hey, can you please donate some money? Like, yeah, you're going to get people who will donate and think that's a great monetization model, but it's going to be a very, very tiny percentage of the people who would actually pay for some kind of in-game benefit or a boost or whatever that looks like. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, ideally, you'd be able to set up something where you diversify your channels. You have multiple coming from all angles, and donations are still valuable, but you have ads or you have a subscription or whatever on top of skins. No, without going crazy, without chopping it up so much that the players can feel it. I guess that's the challenge as designers to figure out how to do that, all that kind of stuff in a way that's doesn't get in the way. That's I don't know if I could think of any games off the top of my head that do it so well that it feels seamless, but it's you could definitely tell when that's not the case, where it's like, oh man, it's a chore. Like I want to play, but I can't. It just feels like I have to not pay to play, but pay to even try to play. Like everything's behind some kind of like, locked paid mechanism. Yeah.
I think a game that I was thinking of that does a good job of buy to play is Melvor Idol. I know it's not necessarily squarely in our space because it's a single player game. But that game is like, it's free to play on web and you pay for the app. So the app is like $10, I think. Like it's not.
They have a free app.
They do? Okay, nice.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's powered by ads, I believe. But then you can upgrade to like a one-time payment and you get the pro version.
Yeah. Cool. But yeah, there's like no microtransactions in the game at all because it's, single player. So it kind of, there's not a competition level to it. I know people still spend money on single player games. Like it's wild to me, but yeah. So that's like their main monetization model. And they've done super, super well with that. And there's also, I think he has a Patreon. Even before Jagex picked them up, that people would sub to his Patreon just to get access to a test server so that they could see what he was doing ahead of time. So again, not pay to win at all. But he had like thousands of people who were paying, $5-10 a month just to be part of the secret club that got access to, the behind the scenes stuff. So another really interesting idea that can work at scale. I don't know if it would work in a smaller game. Like I don't think Elithor could probably do well with that kind of model, but when you've got, hundreds of thousands of people with eyes on your game, I think that could be a really sustainable model.
Oh yeah. That's really, oh good.
Sorry, he also doesn't have to like pay for servers or anything because, as you said, it's single player. So his outgoings are literally just him and the developers that he pays if he does.
That's pretty cool. What was I gonna say? Sorry, I just lost my train of thought on that. Sorry, I'll remember it later.
All good. Have you guys seen any games do like ads well?
Only mobile games. So. I don't really recall any browser-based games that really run ads.
The ones that I've seen are just typically, basic Google ads or something. Nothing that stands out as, interesting, really.
Yeah. I thought about doing something like a sponsorship type deal, or like, you get to be the main name, like Elithor's, like this month is run by whoever, and like you pay X dollars to be the sponsor, but I feel like it's difficult, especially in our space, to like who would want to spend that kind of money for a sponsorship slot. Like, what does our demographic of players really have that makes it worthwhile or valuable? You know, like game ads are pretty cheap as far as cost goes and, you know, ROI and stuff.
Yeah, that just did remind me of something we used to have in Imperial Conflict. It wasn't directly a sponsorship or an ad kind of thing, but I saw potential for it. So in our game, we have a bunch of planets. You know, it's a space themed game. And for people who bought the VIP pass at the time, this is before Patreon, they spent like $10 every 3 months for a VIP pass, and they could name the planets. And I always thought that'd be really cool if like every individual planet is pretty much real estate, a billboard. So like, $1 gets you, you could name this whatever you want, times that by 3,000 planets in a round or whatever, and just see who bites. You never know. Yeah, I feel like there's other games that have some kind of representation of territory for like, any 4X game or any other game where that's the game world is maybe dynamic and changing hands. I feel like that could be kind of I could see that being something that players would be interested. I would be interested as a player if like I joined some random game, had fun for a couple of months. I thought, you know what? That's mine. I'm gonna put, this is the Fuhan Pai country or whatever. I could definitely see people getting into that.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. So let's say we are creating a brand new game from scratch. How would you ideally design an excellent monetization system for the game?
Oof. Good question.
I'm kind of living this right now, so I'm trying to pick your brains too.
I'll go first because I have the least amount of experience, so this should be interesting. I feel like something that I've always wanted to do is kind of like obviously skins, but like on everything possible. And I'm sure games have done this, but like you have an avatar. Okay, well, you could have any customization for whatever you want your character to look like, any weapon that you're going to use, any ship that you're going to use. That's where my first go-to would be, because that's actually sounds the most fun to me, even though it doesn't have any impact on the game itself. I feel like players really, really get attached to their identity in a game. It's really important. I don't know. I want to say it's a vanity thing. I just think maybe it's more of a validation thing. Like you're investing your time into this experience. It's a social game, especially. And just having representation that, this is what I look like. I'm not just another random, user ID in a database table somewhere. I have a personality. There's a role-playing aspect. That kind of stuff is where my head goes to first. I don't know if that would be the most profitable, but as a player, that sounds the most fun.
Yeah. So kind of like a cosmetics microtransaction type system.
Sure. Yeah. That's where I think I'm most excited for as a player when I see it in other games. That I do like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I'd go along the similar veins. I recently built an avatar builder for a game that probably won't be released anymore. But it allowed customization of like all your accessories, your pants, your shoes, socks, whatever. Like every piece is customizable. And the idea would be that, we can then sell any amount of accessories or color schemes or whatever to the player. But as to your original question, a battle pass, similar to the likes of Valorant, because I enjoyed that progression. Yeah, it costs $9 a month or whatever, but it gives you more of a reason, I guess, to log in. Like for that $9, you then get a whole bunch of missions, which are decently done, and you get a variety of rewards. You get like in-game currency, you could get emotes, you could get skins. There's a whole bunch of different things you could get. Valorant, I think, has 50 levels to it, and the final level is basically unlocking the knife from like the new collection. And it's easily obtainable for any casual gamer. You play 2 or 3 games a day, and you'll be able to get there by the time the battle pass runs out. I think that's the way I want to go, at least with my games. It allows not a pay-to-win aspect, even though, by doing the missions, you might get like extra XP, but it gives everybody the chance to do it.
So I'm not too familiar with that game in particular. Is this kind of like a general content unlock kind of thing where you could just you could get in and have a baseline experience, but if you're into that, if you're paying for that battle pass, you get access to a whole opening of that world. Is that kind of thing?
Yeah, a little bit. League of Legends also does it. League of Legends does it in quite a different way, though. How it actually unfolds a story alongside being able to get skins or wards or whatever from it.
Interesting.
I think Fortnite did it like a long time ago too. I don't know if they were the first one to do it. But yeah, just as you play the game, you get experience and you level up your battle pass and you get free rewards, just for leveling it up. But if you buy like the premium battle pass version, you get like 5 times as many rewards and an experience boost and like bonus missions to do and, stuff like that. And those rewards are usually like cosmetics, but they can also be like additional experience or, some things that probably would be considered pay to win if they were just straight up purchasable. But because they have to be earned through the battle pass, a lot of players have no problem with it because it's, generally accessible to everybody. So
cool. Yeah. So it's like a multiplier, like it changes your rate of progression, maybe.
Yeah, it changes your rate of progression, and it also rewards you for progressing. Like it rewards you more for progressing.
That's cool.
So that's actually a really good idea. I've thought about doing like limited time events in Trounced and possibly Elithor as well, where it's like, hey, you've got 10 levels of this thing, and if you do these specific tasks or accomplish these quests, then you unlock stuff. But if you buy the premium version of this quest line, you get a bunch of extra stuff and some experience boost and maybe access to like a special area or something, like that. I haven't actually done that, but yeah, that's a really good idea. Like it marries the idea that you can limit the amount that somebody's purchasing, right? Like it puts a cap on it. It levels the playing field in a way for everyone, but it also incentivizes people to play your game actively as opposed to just you have the boost and you're done. Like you have the boost, now use it in order to get the most value out of it, which encourages more activity and people engaging with the game. That's a really great idea.
Yeah, that sounds cool. The thing I struggle with is where to actually define or how to define those things. Like what content or what how do you determine the value that something is worth? Like I agonize over putting a reward tier on Patreon. It's like, oh, is another $1 too much? I can't imagine trying to design a whole system and trying to. I mean, I imagine a lot of it is testing. You put feelers out there or you run it for a while and then you adjust as necessary. But that part sounds really. That's where my difficulty would be, is figuring out how to actually define those terms, I guess.
Yeah, I think for me, I just copy. Like, what are all the big AAA games doing with their battle passes or with their monetizations? Like, how are cosmetics being priced? And I think gamers play enough different games that you can kind of just ride on the coattails of what like the big dogs are doing, and people are generally fine with it. Like, I released cosmetics in Elithor maybe like a year ago or so, and you could change things like the color of your name or like the shadow behind your name or special icons and stuff like that. And I was thinking people are going to pay like 50 cents to like $2 to change the color of their name. Like, not a big deal. Did some market research, and like a lot of cosmetics in games go for like $15, $20, $25. Wow. So I was like, I'll just put it out there as like a $20, $25 thing and see if people want to buy it. And people said nothing negative about it and ate it up and purchase multiple cosmetics, even though they can't use them at the same time, just to have options to swap between.
That's awesome.
Like, it kind of blows my mind, because for me, I'm not someone who's motivated by cosmetics. Like, I'll customize, but I'm not going to spend $20 so I can look slightly different than everybody else. I want to win. That's my goal.
Interesting.
So it's interesting to me that people would spend $60, $80 just to customize the way that they appear to everyone else. And that's perfectly fine way for them to spend their money. So.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, market research, I guess it comes down to that. It's just taking a look at what's going on around you, and you don't have to take a shot in the dark. That's it is interesting to think that people would pay, let's say, 50 cents to change the color of their name. Like, something like that does seem almost absurd at face value. Yeah. But when I think about it, it does make sense, because I feel like, especially in like for us in a largely text-based medium, something like that does like catch the eye. And if you do want to stand out, even if it's just for the sake of, just for the sake of standing out, that's it. Why $1? Some people, I mean, I could see myself doing that. What's $1? I mean, it's not like money's, falling all over me, but if I get some kind of value out of it, it's not that much, I could see that making some sense.
Yeah. The crazy thing to me is like, cause it is just text based, right? Like, it's one of the benefits of being in a browser is you have access to like CSS, and you can customize things like that relatively easy. So there's literally some name colors that I have as a cosmetic that's just color purple, and that's it. Like no special hex, no like, linear gradient or anything, just color purple. And I sell it for $18. And I have like half a dozen or to a dozen people who are like, I love that color. I'm going to spend $18 to change my name to purple. And so you have enough variety, especially in the browser space, to create, special gradients or animations or things like that can really, you can create enough variety that players can mix and match to create their own custom combination. And even though that combination may cost $50 or $60, like players have no problem accumulating those premium currency over time and purchasing that. And, they're happy with the result because they're unique, right? They're not like anybody else. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it blew my mind, like thinking about people wanting this so bad. And I was like, maybe it's a vocal minority kind of thing, but no, like the vast majority of people really enjoy that.
Nice. I'm taking notes here for IC.
Yeah, you should do it.
It's funny you mentioned the price. Because you mentioned like 50 cents to $2. But when it comes down to it, if you put a package up for $50, that's essentially like 100 people buying something for 50 cents.
Yep.
But instead, you only need to sell that to one person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's like a rule of thumb in the SaaS space too, like software as a service. Like the idea of creating a $5 a month SaaS is so hard to scale because you need tens of thousands of people to make it worthwhile. Where if you create like a very high end SaaS that's maybe, $50 to $100 a month, you have to sell like, a fraction of what you would otherwise. And all you have to do is either package it in a way that it shows the value to the player or, just put enough stuff into the package that $50 package is like, becomes a no brainer, whatever that looks like. But yeah, you're right. It's absolutely easier to sell. I've sold way more high ticket items than I have low ticket items as far as actual money spent. Does that make sense? Like my $100 plus packages have brought in significantly more revenue than my $5 to $10 packages, even though way more people buy the $5 to $10 packages.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's like the model matches the the activity level, like or the maybe enthusiasm level. You're going to have like the whales or the people who are like hardcore into it. And if they're that invested into the experience already, I would imagine they'd be more willing to buy the higher ticket item versus trying to convince like the majority of casual players that they should spend even $1.
Yeah,
that makes sense. Yeah, that's
and
true.
Also
oh, go ahead.
Go on. No, Karen.
I was just thinking about what you were saying about the web technologies. It reminds me of eBay listings, where they kind of like nickel and dime you on all the different little customizations you can do to get your listing to stand out. But it's clearly a model that works. And this, our games aren't exactly that, but I think there is a comparison there where if you want to show off your whatever, that you have all these different ways you could split that by font color, font size, shadows, whatever, let alone graphically, like your avatar options and all that kind of stuff. That totally makes sense. Sorry, Ian, what you're saying?
No, I was just gonna quickly go back to like the cost of things as well, because when it comes to SaaS, I know it's slightly off topic, but the chances are you're gonna spend a lot more time helping those people that are spending $5 or $10 than the guys that are spending 50 or 100. So it's not just the value of the package. You're actually cutting down on your customer service because the people that are buying your product really want it and they're actually invested in it.
That's true.
Yeah. And all those things make so much sense when you're thinking about it from a business perspective. But for some reason, when you take that same frame of thinking and you put it in games, it just dissolves for me. I know the same principles apply, but it just feels like a different world for some reason to me.
It is. I mean, it's different for all kinds of reasons, but I think about people that I know that they will scoff at the idea of paying anything, like at all. I'm sure you guys have that experience too. And that's a very difficult barrier to get over that I don't think exists in many other businesses, where it's understood that if you're receiving a product or a service, well, you have to pay something for it. And we don't really have that as a baseline, at least anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it probably does have to do with a lot of the microtransaction free-to-play model, especially on mobile. Like the quality of games you can get that you can play for free. Like, Diablo Immortal is a great example because I hate that game so much because of the microtransactions. And I love like old school Diablo, right? But it's something that I can't say it's not a quality game because it really is. Like the animations are great. Like the way that you can autoplay is great. All the options you have for upgrading and stuff is great. Like it's a really quality game that you can play on your phone completely for free. And the only reason you can play for free is because of those microtransactions, right? But I think there's enough of those games that are completely free that we're used to having high quality games to play for free. So when someone says, hey, can you pay $5 for this? I go, well, why would I do that? Even though that might be what I actually want because there's no microtransactions in it. Like I'm so conditioned to quality free games, even with microtransactions, that the idea of spending money on a game feels like foreign to me.
Sure. Yeah, it's a supply and demand thing. Like there's so many, like the barrier to entry, not in our space specifically, but just in general, like it's to get a game in front of people just seems a lot more accessible and easy to do. Not that it's easy to develop, but at least it's easy to get eyes on it compared to how it used to be. It may still be difficult, but there's a lot more opportunity, a lot more potential, which means there's going to be a lot more games as a player. Like you load up your iPhone or your Android or whatever, you look at the App Store, you're never going to play all the games that are there. Yeah. It's just the reality is different than what it used to be. I do remember what I was going to say about you mentioned I think it was buying access to dev servers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I feel like that's such a cool one because I feel like there's something about exclusivity, not like just being part of a club, seeing how things work behind the scenes, getting access to something that's like secret feeling, even though it's just a dev server, it's going to come out. Whatever they're working on is probably going to come out eventually in some form. If not, it gets scrapped. Who cares? But as a player, I do think it's such an exciting thing to feel like you're part of that experience. That you get to be like, it's almost like you had a hand in it because you did. If you're playtesting,
yeah,
it's like, you're not just a player. You're kind of like on the inside. You got the inside scoop and that kind of stuff. So I definitely see the value for that. I haven't paid for anything like that myself, but I have had players for Imperial Conflict pay specifically for that purpose because it's cool. It's like they want to be ahead of the crowd. So that's always a fun one to see when people are able to do that to a degree that's successful.
Yeah. Yeah, I see that a lot in early access games too. I know a lot of people buy early access games because they, believe in the long-term vision or they want to help support the devs or whatever. But I think a lot of people also do it just to get that behind the scenes peek, right? Like I get to see this unfold. I get to see a game that's not quite finished yet. I probably have a voice in the way that it unfolds and the way that it, turns into the final product because I'm one of these early access people. Like being a part of that group, I think is a valuable feeling that people can purchase. And I think it's also a benefit to the developers, right? Because you have people who are helping test your product, but you also have people who are paying to test your product. Like you're proving that your game is worth paying for because people are paying just to test it, right? Like it's a win-win on all sides for devs and for game players.
I think there's a nice overlap there with community too, because I feel like when people do that, they're paying their money, but they get access to a server. Then they're paying their time. They're investing themselves personally, and then they associate with other people who are doing the same. And it feels good to feel like you're part of an experience that's going to turn into something positive that other people get to enjoy. And that's kind of hard to put a dollar value on, but you know it when you feel it. Like when you've had that kind of experience, like this is great. I'm happy. This provides some kind of like, not an emotional response or emotional investment, but it's like making friends. It's like being part of something. That's really important. So I feel like that's a nice monetization experience because it doesn't dip into predatory. It's not controversial necessarily. It's got a positive association, which I really like.
Yeah. And it's something that's like always worthwhile, right? It's not something you sell once and you're done. Like if you're actively developing your game, you should have new content coming out regularly. And so people who want to be a part of that test server would probably be willing to pay a monthly fee instead of just a flat fee to be a part of it. So that's also sustainable in the long run too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to throw some shade on that actually.
Let's hear it.
With Idlescape, we actually had a test server. And unfortunately, people actually took advantage of this because they knew what was coming. They knew what would hold value. They knew if things were going to get nerfed or buffed. So actually, it was quite a negative for a long time. So while, it may seem like a good idea, if you have a game that involves player-to-player trading and things, you might want to consider how you go about showing the test server, especially when it comes to actually using live data. It could really bite you in the ass.
That's a good point. I never would have thought of that. I guess knowledge can be dangerous in certain contexts. It could affect the balance. That's interesting. Huh.
Yeah. Yeah, because I know Millvore Idol does a good job at the test server, but like it's a single player game, right? Like who cares if you know ahead of time? Like you're not competing. Yeah, so I have a balance team for Elithor. Like it's a group of players who love the game and want to help balance new features. And one of the requirements that I have, like that they need to sign off on, is that if I see them abusing that market knowledge, right? Because there's like a player to player market, like, hey, you know, this item is going to be super valuable next patch. And then they buy up a ton of it so that they can sell it ahead of time. Like that's just a permanent ban, ejection, no, you know, second strike. That's just it. And that like, it's very clear. It's one of the few rules that I have for the balance team. But I've had players who are like, because I know some people just love playing the market in games, right? Like they like seeing, oh, this new patch is coming out. What would it look like? What would the future hold? And so I've had players who do that. Like they see a patch is coming out. And so they preemptively buy up a ton of stuff on the market. And then when the patch comes out, it's like, oh, hey, this item 10x and this item is like the same. So then they go and sell it, and creating like a ton of pain for me, actually, because people are blaming this balance team that I've created that they're using insider knowledge and stuff. And I have to go in and verify it every single time. So yeah, I can definitely see if you were to open the test server to like a bunch of people, that would be a nightmare to try and keep track of like who's abusing knowledge and who's not. And like, is that okay? Or, you know, if that comes with the territory, for sure.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. Yeah.
It's not just those individual players either. It's if they tell somebody, like, how are you going to trace that back to the actual person that is abusing that power?
Sure. Yeah. Maybe I'm a little too, I don't know, optimistic is the right word, but I guess it's not all roses. I mean, I know that we've had our own experiences with IC where, you know, for our test server, it's an hourly running game on the live server, but the test server runs ticks every minute. And it's really easy to find exploits that way. And people have obviously found those and abused those. And I guess the reality is it's not quite just like this exciting, you know, everyone pats themselves on the back and seems kumbaya. It's got to be, you know, monitored and, you know, evaluated like everything else. But that said, in general, I do think it's a nice offering, at least, to feel like you can be, you know, part of an experience that not everybody will get to be a part of. Yeah. But like you guys are pointing out, it's got trade-offs. Clearly.
I completely agree. I think it is a good idea. But yeah, you've also got to bear in mind that if you are going to use what is going to be the live data to balance, you need to be aware that people will exploit this.
Yeah. I mean, that's I guess this is could be a good topic of itself, but people are always going to be looking for the exploit. And when money is involved for something like early access, I could even see that being twisted to like, oh, the people who pay are able to get access to figure out how to exploit the game or something weird like that, which unfortunately that's clearly not going to be the intent, but people could misperceive it just because sometimes that's what happens, unfortunately.
Yeah, I see that in like early access games too. Like there's always people who are like, you know, going to try and be helpful and report bugs that they see them and really help, you know, move the development along. But there's also always going to be people who will look for those bugs and keep them secret and try and hide them from other people. So when they finally make it into the real game, they can abuse it and take advantage of it. Yeah. So I see that not just in our space, but in games in general, especially. Mm-hmm. It's almost like we're dealing with real humans, you know?
Almost. Have you guys seen any games that do like, I guess this would be DLC I'm thinking of, like where there's a base universe or a base like narrative and there's an offshoot that you have to pay to unlock to kind of round out your experience of the game universe. Have you seen that done anywhere well in our space or otherwise?
I don't think so. Are you thinking kind of like the RuneScape model? Like you have the free-to-play world that you can mess around in, but if you want to experience like the whole world, you have to pay to like go and get access to all the skills and stuff?
Something like that, but maybe inverted, where for free you get the whole thing, but if there's like some lore or some side like thing that kind of like fleshes out the experience from, you know, fleshes out the narrative a little bit, that's only for people who like buy the subscription or pay for whatever. I feel like that could be an interesting experience, interesting benefit for those who are willing to pay for it.
So how would you design that in a way that, like, let's say there's like a certain storyline you're selling access to that, like I'm in a guild and I decide, hey, like Randy should go and buy that. And then he'll tell us all what the story was. And you know what I mean? Like, so we're not each purchasing it to get the experience. We can just kind of hear about it from someone else, or I'm sure there's like, you know, custom items you could get or cosmetics you could unlock or things like that. But
sure.
Yeah,
I'm not sure how it would actually play out. I guess that's where the tricky part would be. But it does sound exciting from like I guess as a writing you know, experience, or I guess reading experience for the player to know that, like, you know, there's this event in the game universe that's happening, and it involves these characters or these entities or whatever. And then there's this side like backstory about this one side character or something that just could be its own story of itself that you wouldn't know unless you paid the $10 a month or whatever.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I like that idea. I think that it what was I going to say? It lends itself, you have to design the game around that, right? Like it's not something that like I'm thinking about like Elithor. I don't think I could add something like that just randomly to the game, because like it would kind of break the whole structure of the game, or it would be so tangential that it wouldn't make any difference at all, right? Like you almost have to kind of design your game either narratively or something, like keeping in mind you're going to have offshoots, you know.
Sure, you have to have story hooks in place, or at least the potential for them. Yeah, I asked because I feel like you know, the writing side of games is always so interesting to me, and when we think about monetization, for me, I always think like, oh, there's an opportunity right there. Like, how do you assign value to you know, how do you break a story apart in a way that you could assign value to different parts that aren't necessary, but could add a whole lot to the individual who's playing it for the long haul. I haven't seen anybody do anything like that in particular, but I do wonder if that's you know, if that's done anywhere in a way that that feels interesting.
The only game that I know of, and it's not a browser-based game whatsoever, but it's Dying Light. They have some quite intensive DLCs, and for the first game, you could play through the entire story. But then, if you bought the DLC, it would unlock this like completely different story in a completely different city. So that's locked behind a paywall because it is DLC. But it isn't in our genre at all.
Sure. Yeah, but I mean, I guess there's no reason it couldn't be. Although I guess the tricky thing about, I don't know, I can only speak from experience with Imperial Conflict, and I don't know how that kind of thing could translate to a game that's really not story-based, like ours just isn't. So I don't know how we would hook anything to anything like that. But I know other games are a little more focused on, I guess, how would I say this? Just world building, a little more care put into world building. Yeah. I feel like that could be a good opportunity there.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. And I think it lends itself well to the medium too, like having it in a browser, like being able to create more story or quests to interact with or something like that. Like creating content for browser-based games is significantly easier than creating content for like, you know, a Unity game or something like that. Like you're not messing as much with assets and things. If you have the right engine in place, just adding straight content should be relatively straightforward. So yeah, that's a really good idea.
Yeah. Well, do you guys have like a favorite monetization model that you see? Like I'm thinking about games that I play, like just in general, and you know, I can't think of. I mean, for the most part, I don't really care. I don't spend a lot of money on games. So as a player, I'm trying to think when I do. I don't know. Maybe I guess the subscription model. Maybe I don't know. What do you guys think?
I like the idea of a sub model, but I don't like to actually spend it. So like RuneScape is coming out with their, what are they calling it? Like early access or like fast start worlds or something like that, where that's like accelerated experience rate. And it's basically its own world, completely separate from the rest of RuneScape, that you can create a character and race high scores with people like from brand new. And then after you've leveled to a certain point, then your character joins the main world. And so you can keep playing on like normal with everybody else, but it's kind of like this fresh start type feel, but it's only for people who are subbed. And so I love RuneScape, and I used to play it a whole bunch and would play it, but you can purchase, you know, bonds in games. You don't have to actually spend real money. Like you can use your in-game currency to buy it and stuff. And so the idea of me spending $11 a month to like play this game is like, I don't really actually want to spend it. Like, what if I buy it and play it for a day and then like I decide I don't want to play it anymore? Like I feel a pressure to play the game when I have a sub running. So I've done the same thing too with like World of Warcraft. Like I play with, you know, my brothers are super into games. And so whatever they pick up, like I'll pick up and play with them. And so there was a season where we were all playing World of Warcraft. And then as it started to kind of taper off at the end, I just like preemptively cut my sub because I was like, I don't want to be spending, you know, however much money a month and then not feel like I'm getting my money's worth out of it. you know?
Yeah.
So I think I probably would lean toward microtransactions because it makes games more accessible. I can try them for free. I can get a feel for it. A lot of games are more predatory, which is the downside. But I think that microtransactions are kind of the future of monetization. And as we figure out ways to do it more ethically in ways that don't step on people's toes, like it will be better for the gaming industry overall. So I think that's probably where I personally would lean. Yeah.
What are you thinking?
I would go with the battle pass. I have spent way more than I care to admit, probably $10,000-$15,000 in total over the past 10 years or so, maybe.
Wow.
On different things. I mean, CSGO, for example, I have bought an absolute metric ton of skins. And they range from like a few bucks to a few thousand. Wow. And yes, I've spent the most I spent on a skin was $1,300 on a single skin. Which is actually interesting because if I kept it and sold it now, that would actually be worth $3,500-$4,000.
Wow.
So it would actually have been an incredible investment. But I actually sold it at a loss for $1,000.
Yeah.
But I like battle passes. Any game with a battle pass, I will probably just pay for it. I enjoy the progression. I enjoy getting those little rewards. I don't even I've picked up Wild Rift recently, which is basically League of Legends on mobile for those that don't know. And they have a battle pass going, and I pick it up because it's just I like the missions. I like the animations of when you complete something. I like that little dopamine hit, Some people enjoy social media, getting likes on Twitter or whatever, but I just like leveling. I think it's fun.
Sure, yeah. That's fair. Yeah. I'm trying to think for myself. I guess even though I couldn't think of anything earlier, and I went on that whole spiel about cosmetics and skins and stuff, I don't really buy any. It sounds fun, but when it comes down to pulling out my wallet, I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's tough because maybe it's a generational thing too with us who grew up with mainly offline gaming that it's hard for me to think like I want to pay for anything other than paying for the full game. It's not that I'm cheap. I'd totally put down for a game if I could see the value and it makes sense and it sounds exciting. I don't mind paying. Like a lot of the games on Steam, they're really inexpensive even. I'm like, oh, this is only $10. Okay, yeah. But that's, I think, because maybe a different generation where that kind of stuff would seem cheaper. Now maybe it's just, I don't know. But I guess if I had to pick one, I would think maybe skins and stuff, just because I like the idea of people kind of fleshing out their identity and their avatar and stuff.
Yeah. Have you ever not purchased a game because it's like, $20-$30 and you're not sure if you would really enjoy it or not? And so you kind of waffle on the fence, watch YouTube videos, maybe don't pull the trigger? Yeah,
there's been a couple of cases. And a lot of times, maybe it's the games I like to play. It's often there's like a demo version. It's like, okay, cool. There you go. However much, like 10 minutes long, and I get to experience a taste of it. Okay, now I'll pay the $20. This seems like it was worth it.
Yeah.
That tends to be my experience, I guess.
I don't remember the last time I actually bought a game. Every game I've played has been free to play with microtransactions or a subscription. Mm-hmm. Elder Scrolls Online, I really enjoyed. Still do when I get a chance to play it. But I have a subscription that just rolls every month. And I haven't played it for 2 months now, but I still pay it because I just enjoy the game and I know I'll get back into it. And with that subscription, you get like crowns, which are essentially like gems or credits. So they stack up over the months. But I don't ever remember buying like a game. I don't buy any of the AAA games. They don't interest me anymore.
It's interesting you say that because I just realized like I do buy games here and there, but it's not quite what we're talking about. But a lot of the games that I play are on Xbox Game Pass. So I do pay for a subscription. Yeah. It's not a game subscription. It's a platform subscription. It's like, okay, now I get to try all these things for free because it's just, I'm paying for it, but it's a very small amount compared to the amount of different games I'm trying. I guess that would be, I don't know if that would be considered a game model so much as like a bigger picture kind of model, but that's, I guess, kind of related.
I'm building something in that realm, actually. The new job I have, I can't really reveal many details, but one of the ideas I actually want is to implement a platform pass. Mm-hmm. So you basically pay $10, $15 a month, and you actually get benefits in all the games that we actually publish and develop.
Cool. So it's the same concept, just like blasting it open and multiplying it. That's super cool.
Yeah. The reason for it is because I used to play Perfect World, and they turned into Arc Games. And basically, what you do there is you go to arcgames.com, you fill up your Zen, and then you can spend it on any of the games in that platform. So you're not ever forced to just spend it in one place. And with the variety of games that we have planned, it makes a lot of sense, because if players buy something in one game and then they don't like it, that currency isn't then strongly put into that game. They can put it in a different game if they want to.
Makes sense.
So it's interesting you mentioned that, because Nexon games, like they publish MapleStory and stuff like that. They used to do that. So you could buy NX Cash was their premium currency and use it across any game. And they actually stopped doing it because people could use it in different games. And so people would say like, oh, well, like I'll, buy a little bit in this game and then maybe I'll use it in a different game. And it actually ended up lowering their revenue like pretty drastically. And so it could be argued that it's predatory, but they siloed every individual game. So like if you spend $50 on MapleStory and you only use 10 of it, you can't use the rest of that 40 on like Cartrider or some other game. Like you'd have to go spend more money on Cartrider to do the separate one and let your money just sit in the other game. So
I think that
I don't know.
Comes down to scale. With NX, I don't know if they're $1 billion company, but they're certainly in the hundreds of millions.
Yeah.
Especially with the success of MapleStory. So perhaps for them, yeah, it definitely makes sense. But for our genre, which is quite a bit smaller than them, I see it more as if you're getting revenue, it's not a negative if they're just going to spend it in another game that you publish. Like you're still getting that revenue.
Makes sense.
Yeah. I think there may be like some issue with maybe stepping on toes with monetization and stuff. Like, because if you have, let's say, $5 gets you 5,000 gems, you have to use that same exact valuation across all your games. And so there's no, fluctuation. Like you have to, keeping in mind, you're balancing economies of different games and then balancing what the premium currency is worth and what kind of benefits it could give you. Like I could see how that could introduce a lot of complexity as far as planning ahead, especially with multiple titles.
Yeah, I hadn't really considered that, especially from the balancing aspect. Once you put the premium currency into the game, then it's in the game. You can't then pull it out. It's more of a central buying platform where you top up your account on the publishing platform, and then you can choose to put it into a game. But once it's in the game, you can't then pull it out into another.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
As far as like whether or not something like that could be predatory, I guess that always goes back to the, what expectations are set. Like from a user experience, like what did it, are they feel like they're being tricked, I guess that's how I feel like predatory stuff always comes back to. It's like, that's not what I thought I was getting. Like, oh man, this is, you feel like whatever. But if it's done in a way where players know what they're getting and it's explained up front and clearly, can't see that being too much of a problem.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, I think if you're like, hey, you can use currency anywhere, and then 6 months later, you're like, crap, our revenue's down. So you just kind of backpedal and like, actually, you can't. Like, that would be pretty clever.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think the last game I purchased, because you mentioned that, I'm trying to think, like, I just never buy games unless like I have friends who have bought games. So I think the last game I bought was like Civ 6, whenever that came out, like forever ago. And then more recently, Raft. I don't know if you guys have heard of that. It's like a, kind of a survival game. You're on a raft, you collect stuff, build up your raft. So, and that's like, $20. But even I was thinking about that game as an example of monetization. Like it's made by a super small dev team, maybe even one guy, and it's $20 and it's got pretty big and popular. And so he sold a whole bunch of it on Steam. But I was thinking like, I've gotten way more than $20 of enjoyment out of this game. Like if it was a free to play game and I could just jump in, I at this point probably would have spent $20 or more on certain cosmetics or making my character look a certain way or like a goofy hat or something like that, And so there's part of me that actually wants to support this developer even more because like I love the game so much. I love what they've done. They've got like a real knack for game making, but I have zero avenues of supporting them. Like I can't buy anything. I could buy more titles of the game and give them to people, but everyone that I know already owns it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's
I got it gifted to me.
Yeah, there you go. So, but yeah, like as a player, I often think of monetization from a developer perspective. But as a player, I think the buy to play model because there are games where I have not bought them because I've waffled on the fence and I'm not sure. Like Foxhole is an example. I want to buy the game. It sounds really cool. It's like $30. Do I want to drop $30 on a game that I might like get into and it feels kind of clunky or I don't enjoy it, and then I can do a refund on Steam, but I don't really want to have to do that, right? So I've just opted to not get it yet. I might still buy it at some point, but it's a very big wall for me to actually commit to spending money. But then in the case of Raft, like I spent the money and now I want to spend more, but there's no opportunity for that, which is kind of a bummer, you know? So,
yeah, that's an interesting problem. I mean,
yeah,
it's like, what's that? That Fry from Futurama, shut up and take my money kind of thing.
Yeah,
I totally get it. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that about how much time you get out of it too. Like that's how I think about whether or not something is worth, let's say, $20. When you have something like a movie, you pay for a movie, or you watch it at the theater, whatever it is, you get like 3 hours tops for a long one. But you have games where you're getting days, weeks, hundreds of hours at a minimum for some of these games. Why wouldn't you kick a little support back up?
Yeah.
But of course, that's me. That's my bias speaking, because I'm on the other end of it, putting the time back into developing it. And like we're saying earlier, if there's so many free alternatives, it doesn't quite work out that way all the time.
Yeah.
All right. I think should we wrap it up here? You guys got anything else you wanted to hit up?
Yeah, it sounds pretty good.
All right. Well, this was super exciting. I'm looking forward to listening back on the edit.
Yeah, same.
But yeah, this will be up one day early for the Patreon subscribers. Everyone who's already subscribed, thank you very much. Really appreciate that. If you haven't yet, it's at patreon.com/PBBG. This episode will be up one day early, and then it will go up on YouTube and the podcasting platforms after that.
And also, if you sub to our Patreon, you get a whole bunch of benefits of being part of a special super secret Discord group where you get sneak peek into the testing of stuff. I don't know. I'm trying to sell it, right?
Hey, that sounds good.
A little behind the scenes, right? Like, you get to help build a community, be a part of it. You give feedback that's listened to a little more carefully. So yeah,
sure. Yeah, no, seriously though, we have a small group in there already, and we're we're not just talking about the podcast. We're kicking ideas around improving the Discord and just general improving the situation, and seeing how it goes from there. So yeah, that is there for you. There's a members only Discord channel for those who decide to join. All right. Well, I guess we'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks for making it out today. And we'll, next month we'll see what the community chooses for the next topic.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
See you guys.
See ya.
See ya.